Family, what up? Your neighborhood Spider S, minus the spider, 100% plus the S. We're about to get this live going with my good brother Anthony, coming from Cali. Water is the way. Here he is. Let me wave to him and then see if I can get you on there. Add you. My brother receives and accepts the invitation. We can continue on with this live. And this is, again, in preparation
Boom,
for...
we're here.
Yeah, we're here. We're in the house. How's it going, bro?
Wonderful, man. How are you doing?
Nice, nice. Yeah, my man coming from Germany. What's up, brother? Got some family on? I'm taking the Bluetooth off. You can still hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I'm really happy for everyone that's tuned in. This is Ez coming in from live, lovely Tulum. My brother coming in from Cali, Santa Ana. And today we're talking, we're just chopping it up, but really the intention is to give a little pre-show because we're going to be doing the Obsidian Soul Lounge together. Avatars, the way of our waters is going to be the discussion topic. My brother Anthony and I are both, deeply concerned in wanting to stay connected with the truth of waters and its relevancy to us. Some of the topics that we'll get into during the gathering that we're going to have here, which is the Obsidian Soul Lounge, live and also online at the same time. This will be the fourth installment of that. And, we're going to get into the cycles, especially when it comes to men's cycles with water. Also understanding water's relevancy to relationship, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with nature, your relationship to your partners, the proper functioning of the body as it relates to waters, the best waters to be bringing into your body, some systems that are available for you to be able to bring those waters into your body, into your household, into your life, etc. So I just want to welcome you, my dear brother, on, and of course, introduce you as someone who's very dear to me. We connected during COVID and had amazing walks, dialogues. We've always been just sharing straightforward from the heart, and I'm excited to get to build with you and to get into this and also the metaphysics of our connection with water, and really just to chop it up and let everyone get a feel for you. And we've done at least 4 lives already together, so just getting back into it. Aloha, Trent. Aloha. And also, before we get started, I definitely want to just take a minute and honor both of us love Hawaii, and I know we're both aware of what's going on there in Maui. I can't believe it. I've spent a lot of time in Lahaina. It's one of the places that I would say I was reborn. Just after my cancer, I went and spent time there to connect with the island, with Haleakala, and like there were still sugarcane growing, at that time. And so I just would love coming off the plane, going to Paia, grabbing some food, cruising around the whole road to Hana, going up the volcano, watching the sunset or sunrise, coming down and connecting with the land. And so our hearts are always with the Aina and our Hana out there.
Yes. It's like you were reading my mind, man. I was like, I really wanted to just take a moment and acknowledge, friends and family over there on the Aina at the moment. It's a very unfortunate situation, and, we send our energy and love, and if any of you can make donations, or if you have friends and family over there, please reach out and see if they're okay, see if there's anything you can do to help them. It's very heavy on the heart to see something so beautiful go through such destruction, and hopefully the intention was only by nature and there was no interference by any sort of agencies that were trying to take anything from that area, because I think enough has been taken from that beautiful land, and it's important that we honor it.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Love you, man. So we send that intention up, honoring that land, honoring the ancestors, the shared ancestors of what it is to be in this globe and to share space together, to connect with, that's right, with Gaia, with Moana, all the elements, all the wisdom that's there, the creatures in the ocean that are witnessing, as well as the creatures on land, those who've been displaced because it's an island, so only so many of them can get off and get away, and also honoring the people who've transitioned in the process of all this fire and the history that is shifting and transitioning into whatever is to come next, with all the spaces and buildings that have been, burnt. Like it really hurts my heart to see this, and I know things happen in life. So the next thing is, how do people come together, and how the land is, reconnected with, essentially, and then where they go from there. But they have our support and spirit, and it's given so much to me, given so much to you in terms of even our ethos with navigating with the waters, that, I'd be remiss not to honor that in all spaces that are navigating the same thing. Maui's the one that's online right now and in everyone's face, but we know in this world there's things going on everywhere. So I don't just honor what's seen, I honor the unseen and those who don't even have a voice or any media to cover what's happening in the process too.
Thank you for taking that moment out for everything, brother. I definitely appreciate that, and it's beautiful that we can honor that, and just thank you for being you and having that wonderful heart that you do.
Absolutely, King. Ditto. We're one heart, man. Yeah. So, what's up, brother? I'm so happy. Well, really, to get to drop in with you, and I remember the last lives that we did together. We were starting to just kind of give people an idea of popular conception with the water, and maybe what's come about in the past couple of years, and also knowledge that's not been spoken to in that regard. Are you down to kind of drop in, or maybe give a little background as to you and your journey with the waters, and share, whatever's on mind and heart, and then we can get into some other things or questions that pop up from myself or from those online?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. So, essentially, sometimes what I like to say is the water likes to find you. The water is going to come and find you, and that's what it did for me. Living water found me in 2017, although I was unaware of what I could really fathom with it, because I didn't have a proper explanation of what I was really getting into. And then, lo and behold, it came back and was like, hey, I'm here. I'm here again. I'm here for you to come and spend time with me. I'm here for you to come and share this with others. And basically what had happened is, in the era of 2019, I was really just determined on purpose, like what I was really here for. And I feel like that's always something that we're always uncovering. It gets deeper and deeper. And essentially what had happened for me is I was just feeling disconnected from myself. And what had taken place is I went for some self-exploratory aspects with some beautiful sacred medicine, and I got a very special message that said that the ocean needed your help. And then I was reconnected to the living waters, specifically from the Kangen systems, and I just knew that was an important part of my journey, and how I was able to help the ocean, help other people, and kind of go from there. And it really showed me an aspect of how important it is that we are actually getting the proper water for our body, because I never knew that I had a thirst that I was still searching to quench, regardless of how much water I was already drinking prior to ever drinking that water.
I got to write that down, bro. Yeah, man. The unquenchable thirst is the worst if you haven't discovered it first. Yeah, man.
So I had no idea that I was actually still dehydrated with the amount of water that I was drinking. And it really illuminated a lot for me once I sat and spent time with it for about 3 months. And then I went and sat in ceremony again. And basically from there, so much more was revealed and so much more information was available to me, because the waters in my body were able to receive the information on a level of clarity that I had never had before. Wow. And I can say that to this day, that the clarity that I have from drinking the proper water, because my body is actually communicating properly, because water is the great communicator within the body as well as outside of it as well. We know that water is the communicator outside as well. So when I communicated and was able to commune back with my body again, and realize that there was some things that were missing, and water was that missing puzzle, it spoke volumes. It spoke volumes to me, and I realized how important it is for people to be aware of this information and have access, and know that there's people out there that are willing to help them get it. And from this present moment now, it's beautiful to see that you have people like Andrew Huberman that are speaking about electrolyzed reduced water, and bringing you know, notoriety to it. You know, I know he says that, you know, not all of us are going to need it, but I tend to disagree, man, because I know what it's like to not have it, and I know what it's like to have it. And I will tell you that having it is a completely different just dimension of
Absolutely.
self-knowing within you and your body, being connected to yourself. I mean, I think everyone is always looking to know somebody else deeper, and the most important person that you should be knowing is the depths of yourself.
Oh, oh, man, I really love what you're speaking to. You know, and of course, I've had my own journeys wanting to connect with water through surfing, through living in Hawaii and being on islands and going to different islands. But really, I kept to myself a lot of the time when I was in Hawaii. You know, from 2007 really all the way to 2016, and of course, I go back when I can. But I spent a lot of time in the waters. There was a time when I was depressed and even suicidal, and I had decided to kill myself. But I went off into the world, but I never broke that connection with the waters. It was in the waters that I came alive again, going to Bali, going to waterfalls and listening to the call, even through my dreams, opening up to listen to myself and being told, you know, go to this waterfall and stick your head, like go sit in the waterfall. And I would do this, and then all this information would come through. And so this really changed the course of my life. And, you know, just observing even after fasting, but what it is to put good waters in, you know, which holds memory and is the communicating medium. And then recognizing that, wow, even after those talks that we had, you know, in Huntington Beach, where you were speaking to like how we should consider these waters that are on the stores, you know, in these plastic bottles, and sometimes you can't escape that. But what's going on as all of this information is being downloaded and stored before you come to drink it again? What can you do to switch that water up? How can you test the water? So a lot of things were sparked in my mind after that, and they haven't left me since then. And it can be difficult when I'm living in Tulum, Mexico, and so there's a lot of things happening, but there's no infrastructure to protect the waters, and we have unique waters here with these cenotes, you know. And so this place that I'm at right now, we have a cenote pool. So I hold ceremony, I work with medicines as well, and one of the beautiful things that I can, depending on the medicine we're working with, you know, invite a person to do is to go and connect with the land and the water, but which water that, you know, you want to connect with, and then also being able to know that water's safe is a big deal. It's a big deal, you know. Ho'oponopono, sister. Exactly.
Yeah,
Speaking to that.
that's
Yeah.
how we connected too.
That's
I
how
found you.
we connected with Ho'oponopono. I'm also a Ho'oponopono practitioner. I do events where we dive into that, you know, using not the first version, but less, you know, Hugh Haleakala's version, and then also extending that into a group healing dynamic. And so the one thing is recognizing that all that we're surrounded by is alive. It's not just us. There's consciousness in everything, even the plastics. And so how do we, you know, bring ourselves to a place to communicate with that consciousness and receive, and also be protected, because the water will protect you and guide you as to things that are coming. And the one I'm looking forward to discussing just a little bit more within our group, you know, container when we do the Obsidian Soul Lounge, is many people don't realize we're still in a womb, you know, and you think you're just breathing air, but air is a vapor. So we're still in water. Our entire experience here, even though this is a matrix, even though this is a construct, right? And so it's a projection, but it's a projection of something that exists. To not get too deep into that, we're in a vapor, we're in water, and we're in a feminine matrix. And so to be in that space, you know, to honor the greater womb that we're a part of together in the shared dream, and the one that we came from before, and, you know, all this self-similar things, they tie in. So I think we get an opportunity. I think we'll do a series of things on the water, but I'm dropping these little hints to say it's going to be great to invite people in, and then also to get into our cycles as men, which will also give us a little bit deeper and more profound respect, and maybe the intention to seek more understanding of the cycles that women go through and how we relate to each other as complementary beings in this process, however you identify yourself, you know? Yeah, bro.
100%.
So
100%, my man.
yeah, man. And thank you to everyone that's on. Feel free again to share, ask any questions or anything that pops up. But I think where I'd like to go with it right now is maybe we can give the people who are coming in, and maybe they won't get to jump in with us and they're just new to looking at their water. Maybe they've just been like drinking tap water or drinking Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola water, or like whatever, Aquafina, all these things. But like, you know, what can we share about the importance of good water? How do we identify it? I say good, right? The water that's good for the human body. And then maybe we can just start with there. Like what are some of the identifying things for you that let you know?
Well, I know that a lot of people aren't going to have access maybe necessarily to, the best possible spring water or the best possible, fresh living water out of the ground. And that's something that we can speak on and know that, at some point that was available to us. But, everyone, a lot of us, we live in the city, we live where we live, and that's where we've chosen to live, or that's where we can afford to. And that's just what we have to deal with. It's like really working with what you have. And if you don't have access to getting good water, what I recommend at first is like, hey, I highly recommend avoiding anything in plastic. If that's all you have access to, then I completely understand. But anything in plastic, I would highly advise to stay away from. If you can afford yourself the opportunity to get something in glass, if you're still purchasing from a store, that's the first place that you want to be, is you want to be purchasing water in glass.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a higher quality water for yourself. And what you can do to enhance this water is you can add in Redmond real salt, or you can add in Celtic sea salt. And this is going to help remineralize the water, and it's going to help it get into your body a lot easier. And
Can I ask for the Redman, how do you spell, how to spell that? Is it like Redman, like the hip hop artist, like Redman?
Not like the hip hop artist.
Right.
It's Redmond. It's a ancient Himalayan sea salt mine out of Utah. So Redmond real salt. They have electrolytes you can get as well. I personally use either one. Somebody, I know Barbara O'Neill's been making Celtic sea salt real popular here. She went viral with some of those reels that I've seen here, and somebody in California at some of the markets decided they wanted to buy all the Celtic sea salt. So
Okay. Yeah. So they got too excited about it, huh?
Yeah,
But it's a real thing to witness, how your body operates, the clarity that you might have. So this actually, what you're sharing, I'm gonna take notes as we share, because my channel's open, and like some of the things that also come to mind are like us as a dehydrated population, because that's really what you spoke to and what shifted in your mind. There's a lot of things that are going on with people. You remember the book we might have discussed where I believe the title was "You're Not Sick, You're Just Dehydrated," and that was a big eye opener for me. Yeah, and I brought that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, like 75% of the population is actually dehydrated, and that it's because most people, they don't drink water, or they drink juice and they think that they're still getting water, or they drink coffee and they're still getting water, or they drink Gatorade and they're still getting water. But that's not the reality that we're facing here. Caffeine is a diuretic.
Mm-hmm.
Gatorade is a diuretic.
Alcohol.
Alcohol is a huge diuretic, and just poison
Diuretic,
the soul. But the reality is like these things that we've been told that are hydrating for us, so they will equate to our liquids, right? When I was sick, it was my grandfather was always saying, "Hey, drink liquid," but it was it was either water or Gatorade, and I always chose the Gatorade. And as a child, I didn't realize that, hey, the Gatorade was actually making it worse. It was draining the water, even though I was getting electrolytes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I was more or less just getting sugar and then pulling water out of my body. So it's important to just honor that person that you were, because you didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? It's not to judge or beat up or berate the person that you were. You can be proud of where you came. And that's something that I really attest to now, is like, I'm proud of what I've learned along the way, because it shaped me into the person that I am now. And now I get to share that with other people, to realize like there's no shame in the journey. And that's something that I'm really learning to harness, is like, don't be shameful or be embarrassed of where you've come from, because ultimately it shapes the character of who you are. And yeah, I mean, here's the reality is like, we are thirsty, and most of us are drinking water that doesn't properly absorb into the body. There's a professor or chemistry professor out of MIT, Dr. Victor Rios, and he studied the absorbability of water. And he said anything tap, bottled, spring, you're probably only absorbing about 15% of it.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
That's surprising. You said tapped, bottled, and spring.
Yes.
Wow.
Because unfortunately, most of our springs are not primary source water, and they're no longer holding the negative electrical charge anymore.
Mm.
And I know some people may not necessarily understand this concept, but like water can't be negatively electrically charged. Well, it can.
Right.
And it's been proven and it's been tested, and there's been plenty of studies on it. There's plenty of studies on electrolyzed reduced water. There's plenty of studies of naturally occurring electrolyzed reduced water in Nordenau, Germany. There's negatively charged water that comes out in Sardinia, Italy. There's negatively charged water that comes out of Lourdes, France. So there's water.
These are all special sites, you know. That's the thing. I want to, as we go along, I may just, you know, seek to just clarify some terms that we use. Just going back, you know, we spoke to diuretics, and so we, you know, this is something that drives you out. Think of what happens when you have diarrhea. A diuretic is moving water outside of the body, and so it can create a circumstance. When a person is dehydrated, this isn't. It's a catastrophic thing. Like the body diverts energy and its ability to function based on what's in homeostasis. So when you come out of balance, the body seeks to compensate. So if you're consistently in a situation of imbalance, then your energies and the consciousness and everything goes and diverts things. In other words, by the time your mouth is dry, you know, you're already in a catastrophic failure, and there's other things that happen in the body. So I would love to speak to symptoms, but before that, I'd also love if you could share, you know, we're speaking to negative electrically charged water, and like, can you give maybe, can you share maybe an explanation on why a person would want to know about that and what it is? And if I jump the gun and anything, you just let me know too, and I'll just let you, you know, air it out, baby.
Absolutely. No, that's perfect. That's a perfect segue, because basically with the negatively charged water, is a lot of people may not understand this concept. And basically what that's going to come down to is oxidation and antioxidation, right? And we all know that we've been told to take antioxidants because they're good. That's why we're promoted to eat fruits. And the reality is that most things that we encounter at this point are oxidative. And this is why I speak on being aware of your waters in plastic and your waters in the stores, because the problem is if the water was negatively charged and antioxidant at the source that it was bottled at, within 3 days, that antioxidant charge is gone. And this is something that can be spoken on for our fruits too, right? The problem is that most of this time, what they're doing is they're spraying wax or some sort of thing to preserve the fruit because they want it to not rot. Usually, you know, if a fruit falls off the tree, goes down and falls on the ground, within 2 to 3 days, it's going to start rotting, right? And so that's the same thing that can happen with water, and people don't necessarily understand that concept. There's a device.
Seldom talked about.
Yes.
If I could, even before you get into the device, so, you know, just to recap, he's speaking to oxidation and antioxidation. We've heard of antioxidants as something being special to the body. I think maybe for those of you listening, you know, when you hear of oxidation, think of something rusting, right? And then, so what happens when things rust? They become brittle, fall apart, they decompose in a sense, whereas an antioxidant is something that works opposite. So anti-positive would be negative, you know, and so then you have this negative charge, and so it's pulling in a positive by virtue of what it is versus the opposite. And so I just want those of you listening to be thinking antioxidant, like anti-rust, anti-aging, etc. And you've heard those paired together. Okay. Thank you, brother. And I'm holding the thought as where you were, because I believe you were going to go into the instrument to be able to detect, you know, certain oxidation levels and what's relevant in terms of numbers.
Yes. So I actually got acquainted with this device. It's a chemist tool. I got acquainted when I was working in the swimming pool industry. It's called a ORP meter. It is an oxidation reduction potential meter, and basically you're testing the fact if this liquid is oxidative or it's antioxidative. Now, when it comes to swimming pools, the whole potential of that is they want the water to be very oxidative, because the whole idea is to keep the water sanitized. And lo and behold, we have utilized the wonderful element of chlorine to make this oxidative state and sanitization that we use everywhere around the United States for water sanitization. And
Wow.
there are things that they don't speak on chlorine. I'm going to kind of segue a little bit here, but chlorine is a halogen family, right?
Yeah.
And those of us that know a little bit about the periodic table, the halogens are also iodine, fluorine. And so when we kind of go into that, and we remember iodized salt, right? It's like they say iodine is really important. Well, iodine is highly important for your thyroid.
Right.
So here's the thing. With chlorine being so oxidative and the halogens competing with each other, chlorine will go into your body and it will compete with your iodine receptors in your thyroid, which can lead to a lot of thyroid issues. You could essentially say that maybe some of those hold on, let me segue here. Not that.
I'm holding it with you. So yeah, I got you.
Oh gosh, what is it? Like
So we spoke.
Hashimoto's.
Hashimoto's. The different.
I'm forgetting
the
what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting like the term for the what they call those. It's like blanking right now. It's very interesting.
The ions, or is it the salts themselves?
No,
because
what
you
they call,
which I thought
autoimmune. Sorry,
autoimmune response.
Autoimmune,
yeah.
Right? So we can say like, hey, maybe these autoimmune issues, the hyperthyroidism and the hypo, are linked to chlorinated water, right? So oxidative stress on the body, because it's going in there and going to the receptor sites of our thyroid and really taking hold of what's very important to the thyroid, right? So,
let me pop in and just say that we know that thyroid issues are a big deal, and in the like holistic healing industries, there's a lot of focus on that. And I've noticed, just over the years, even before I was on this side of holistic health, I had a lot of friends, a lot of women friends, a lot of men friends going through things with their thyroid, a lot of thyroid issues. And then working in the health physics industry, we are aware of, let's say, a certain isotope such as iodine-131 is released from a nuclear reaction, or something goes wrong with the plant like Fukushima, well, to help counteract that, we invite people to have a certain type of iodine so that it's uptaken by the thyroid and it saturates it so that nothing else could come in. So we have ways that certain things are uptaken in the body, and what you pointed out was chlorine as a halogen, similar to iodine. We got that ine in the end, is going to be affected in the body the same way that a calcium, might be uptaken to a bone. Well, the ines are going to go to a different place in the body as well. They have a corresponding area of uptake. And you speaking to pools and, keeping it in an oxidated state, which essentially we're doing that to sanitize or to sterilize, means that it's not alive. It's getting rid of life. That's the idea behind most sterilization practices. Yeah. So I want to draw that conclusion from, oxidated to sterile to dead versus alive and full of information, which is movement. Yeah. And then bringing it right back to you speaking to the autoimmune system response and oxidative stress on the body from chlorine. I hand it back to you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we know that that's, basically sanitizing life, right? Taking life from what it is, because the whole point of the sanitization in the pools is we don't want a bunch of bacteria, because that could be a problem for all the people that swim in it. Obviously, then, if you think in terms of the body, your body is a living organism and has massive amounts of bacteria and organisms within it. And so you think of your gut, right? It's loaded with bacteria that helps you digest food and things like that. So you are a living organism, and that yet here we are putting oxidated, dead things into the body. So it doesn't go hand in hand. So then to flip the switch now, we're going to go to the antioxidant side, right? So with antioxidation, we think of maybe vitamin C, or you think of astaxanthin, or you think of just fruits, blueberries.
Yeah.
And
oh,
blueberries, right? Just so wonderful.
Blackberries, raspberries, every kind of berry.
Exactly.
Halle Berry. Just kidding, Danny.
Hey, you know. But hey, ultimately, we're looking for antioxidants in that sense, right? Because that plays a very important part on helping the body. The body does create its own antioxidant from the liver, which is glutathione,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a very important antioxidant. But if the body isn't in a proper state of homeostasis, then your body isn't going to produce these things properly, right?
Right.
So if your body isn't properly aligned and isn't properly hydrated, like we said earlier, it's going to start pulling water, energy from specific sources, and you're going to start seeing the body shut down because it's going to essentially keep the heart and lungs, and it's going to keep the most essential functions. Even though everything in the body is the most essential function, it's going to give it to the most thing that is going to allow you to breathe and move, right? So
I want
the less water you have
to
in
point
the
out
body, the less that you're going to function properly.
exactly. And you're speaking to, the body shutting down and going to essential function like essential workers. And we look at some of the things that are being mirrored in this, with, say, the recent shutdowns of so many things, and it's only essential workers versus, a person being able to go out and to get into nature and to receive so much of the other things. So there's a correlation. I'm not one to draw silly correlations. I'm a pragmatist, and I'm big on, like, let's be reasonable and look. We can be unreasonable to imagine, but also, like, there's some factual things that have to do with the conjugate nature of our reality, and I look into those things as part of the metaphysics, and then I see, because we're in a self-similar fractal existence, that you can learn one thing in one area and it has a connection because it really is all connected. And so, you know, the diversion of your energy and the ability to function down to the basics to keep a thing going is a special thing that the body does, but we also don't want it in that state all the time. We're robbing ourselves of our best functionality to navigate consciousness in these vehicles. And therefore that does affect relationships because it's all relationship.
Mm-hmm. Right. The most important relationship with self, right? So
Yeah.
then the relationships outside of that can then be, functional as well. And so, when we think of that, we can kind of break this down to oxidation being a proton and then antioxidation being an electron, which then gets more into yin and yang and positive and negative and kind of the duality of the nature that we live in. But ultimately, with antioxidation, a lot of people weren't aware that water actually is able to hold energy and be an antioxidant, right?
Boom. We don't
So,
think of that. I was thinking of something external because of what we've been exposed to.
right.
I, yeah.
And there are ways, if we put ourselves in nature and we give ourselves the proper infrared lights by going in nature and being by the fire and getting the sun on the sunrise and getting the sunset, that we can ultimately have that intracellular um, water and hydration take place because of the environment that we're putting ourselves in. The reality is we're focusing on how we can get water that is antioxidant. And I spoke a little bit on it earlier that water in specific areas, mostly in Europe, that you hear of it now, and it's been documented, is that their water there still is negatively charged. It still has that antioxidant potential. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah. I recently, I went to my first Europe tour and my first journey, sharing the nature of nurture, sharing medicine, cacao medicine, among things, and also group gatherings. So I had the special honor of doing an event in Glastonbury, which is in the UK, and more specifically at the Abbey House. And for those of you who know, or take a chance, and look it up. But within the vicinity are special waters that I got to visit, that have both their negative and positive charge. And it's just wow to receive that in my body, to be able to dip into this space, and then to go on in deeper communion with the land was phenomenal. And I'm missing that. That was one of the things that shifted my thoughts about coming back to Tulum. I was like, man, it's really important for me to have access to living water, at least water that doesn't strip my body. So by virtue of what you're saying, water can have the antioxidant, properties, and when it doesn't, it can also be the reverse in a space that will actually strip your body.
100%, 100%. And when you said strip the body, there's two waters that I know are very popularized within this space that are distilled in reverse osmosis that people are like, yeah, this is great to drink. The problem is that water is stripped of everything. I mean, everything. It's purified, and it's purified to the point where it takes all the good stuff out too. It takes the good and the
Wow.
bad, right? So it's just a
No offense.
solvent that's basically ready to absorb anything that it can. So you take that water and you put it in your body, it's going to start stripping minerals from your body because there is no minerals available. So the most important thing that we have within our body that's going to give energy is, water, but it's also minerals. We're mineral-based beings, and if we're stripping ourselves of that, we're going to also see catastrophic issues take place within that body. So it's important if you drink those waters. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm glad that you're aware of it. It's just, hey, if you're drinking that right now, make sure you're adding Celtic sea salt or Redmond real salt, or even, taking mineral supplements with that, like sea moss, because that water can be very detrimental to your body over a long period of time. And, a lot of people may say, oh, no, that's not true. It is true. It is true. It's really important to consider this. Those things are great filters. Reverse osmosis, I will tell you, it's one of the greatest filters that was probably ever invented. They invented it for the U.S. Navy to get potable water out of the submarines. So you can imagine they're pulling water out of the sea to drink. So it's a great filter. With that, it's also important to remember that you need to remineralize this. And, I'm going to tell you to go ahead and put some electrolyzed reduced water with a medical grade water ionizer on the end of that. So then you're just getting the best possible.
Thank you. That's, it's interesting to also think of that, because distilled water, reverse osmosis, again, things are created and they have their purpose. I think it's really important to investigate the purpose, to investigate the use, like a full investigation. Okay, we're going to use distilled water, say for a fast, but how far do you go with it? Because sometimes you learn, okay, this is great for a fast, and you're like, I'm only going to drink this. We need to understand, again, as part of knowing thyself, how far to go with certain things. A stronger thing is to know how far to go with it, and then what to do to counteract. So I'm glad that you mentioned this, and also the salts. And like here in Tulum, we also have access to sea moss. One of my good friends, Mac, he's a workout aficionado, but a star being, has also been fantastic at making sure that we have access to high-grade sea moss here in Tulum. So if you're here in Tulum and you're looking for some sea moss, I got the connect and make it happen. And it's a regular part of my diet, my livity, I would say.
Yes, 100%.
So, reflecting back now, we've shared about kind of the ORP and the meter. Maybe we can talk about some levels and like what you look for in terms of pH levels, or what you find with the ORP.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the ORP, I mean, I've basically found that you're going to find a lot of oxidation within anything in a plastic bottle, anything that you're buying in the store, anything that you're getting out of your tap, anything that is coming out of the reverse osmosis or distilled, very oxidative in that state. And then obviously, I don't think I need to speak on this, but sparkling water and soda, very oxidative. The carbonic acid is not beneficial to you.
When you're bringing carbon into the body, it's doing the opposite. Am I correct?
Yes, we don't.
Pulling the oxygen, it's not keeping you in the state. Even though it tastes good, it's bubbly. You got a little indigestion to help you burp. Might be nice to toast it up once in a while, but keep in mind what's happening, the state that you're putting your body into. Yeah.
100%. Because, listen, the bubbly water, that was my favorite. And I also couldn't equate why I was so brain foggy all the time, and then drinking a bunch of energy drinks to essentially reverse that brain fog, but then also further dehydrate my body because I was causing a diuretic with the caffeine, right? I was giving myself a false sense of energy. Yeah. So with that, it's just like, hey, these are just things to be aware of. It's not, you're not a bad person if you drink it. It's just like, hey, if you have the awareness now, you know better, you do better. And I personally don't drink bubbly water anymore. Is there a day that I'm like, if somebody wants to toast and they want to, do something, I may toast bubbly water instead of some alcohol. But hey, at the end of the day, I know what it is, and I don't want to put the very thing that I breathe out back into my body. That's waste. So
Well
it's
said.
just,
Well said. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead,
you're
brother.
good, bro. No worries.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just these things that it's these things that we just don't know, right? It's just, if you don't
Yeah.
know, then you don't know. And if you do know, then you do better. And that's just kind of how you move from there. And, so those waters are very oxidative. And then you go to, what I found, you go to, natural spring waters that are primary, or you go to these sources in Europe, they're registering that negative charge. And electrolyzed reduced water from the Kangen unit, it's registering a negative ORP charge. These things are important to consider with having that in there. And with speaking on pH, the body is usually about a 7.3, 7.4 pH.
Write
I know
that down,
that,
folks. 7.473. Yeah.
and I know one of the misconceptions is people like, well, you drink alkaline water, you're gonna change the pH of your body.
Doesn't
Absolutely not.
work like that.
Doesn't
Right.
work like that. Your body is never going to change the pH. Now, there is one way that you can do that, and this is if we're drinking chemically changed alkaline water, which is going to have additives such as sodium bicarbonate and unnatural minerals that aren't properly being processed by the body, right? So sodium bicarbonate, I also got very acquainted with that when I was working with swimming pools, because that was something that brought up the alkalinity levels that in the water, so the water wouldn't suspend the copper piping and turn the pool green.
Can I ask
Because if the
you
acidity
this?
level of the water went too low,
Uh-huh.
it was going to suspend the copper, and the copper would
Right.
then turn the pool green.
You
The
have
same thing can happen
algae.
with our body.
Algal growth too. I have a question. So then, we say sodium bicarbonate, and I always think of that as baking soda. Would we say it's the same thing, or it's
Yes,
different?
sir.
So
Same thing.
baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. So if you're outside of the U.S., you're going to see sodium bicarbonate, or some other way that's expressed. In the U.S., they'll just say baking soda. Also, man, I love what you spoke to, and it's really easy to skip over this, right? That cycle, okay? And I'll make this clear. Now, brain fog is one of the symptoms that comes as a result. There are many things that we suffer in our society that could simply be solved and resolved by getting the right water into the body. So perhaps we'll go over some of the symptoms, but I wanna present this in a certain way. Now, there's a book that I'm writing. There's a workshop that I'm already doing here in Tulum. I'm about being straightforward, and though I do a lot of gatherings, I like sometimes to have the space where I can just cut right to it. So the name of the book is Relationship. And we can even say conscious relationship versus relationships, because a lot of times we're in these spaces where we're proposing to want something, we say we're a part of something, but the other aspects of it, the definition, looking at the fine pieces that make it what it is, and then aligning ourselves to that is a process. And so one of the things that I speak to within this gathering, and I'm taking it from Dr. Alasko, which he wrote a book called Emotional Bullshit, but it's the toxic trio, okay? And the first part of the toxic trio that leads people into kind of spirals of eroding relationships, and we say we want relationship, is something called denial. So what happens is we are presented with some information and we deny an essential fact. Once we do that, to compensate for that, there's always this thing, right? The body is denied something and compensates. We begin to step into a delusion. And then the last part of the delusion, which is, again, there is something that's happening in the grand illusion, but you project something that's contrary to the evidence that's been presented to you. So then you create this lie, which is an incoherency, and then you're blaming. You're blaming someone else on the outside. And so we have a lot of relationship issues that happen in Tulum, because I'm very deep in that space, and a lot of things that are happening in our so-called spiritual or conscious communities that do not reflect what we propose to be, and so it's diluted. So I say this, bringing it back to the symptoms that we can see. A symptom of being in delusion and a symptom of having denied an essential fact is you catch yourself blaming. You've given up your power and everything's external. Blaming is different from accountability. There's things that happen as a result and a consequence, and evidence is there. You can see this. Now, the blame is a symptom. What happens when you're blaming, you're navigating from a space of being worried about anxiety, fear, pain, confusion. These are at least three. There's another one, that I could name, but these are symptoms that point you back. to the source issue, or a source issue that has symptoms. So could you speak to, here's where I bring it back, brain fog is one symptom of us denying our bodies the water and the thing that we need. What are some other things that maybe you've seen in the process that having this kind of good living electrolyzed water for this electrical system that is the body, that's not stripping away our minerals and the components, the conjugate components that help us to function and help consciousness to work properly through this body? What are some things, if you don't mind?
Some positive things that I've seen?
Like brain fog is one symptom.
Okay.
Some other things that maybe a person might not be aware of that could be going on that they've dismissed, but it's actually a sign of their dehydration.
Digestive issues.
Absolutely.
Low energy.
Low energy.
Low energy was one of mine. I mean, I was reaching for the energy drinks. I was drinking like 2 a day. What else could there be? You could have autoimmune issues could be a factor, because now the body's pulling water from a very functional thing that needs is the thyroid. Some of those. That's just one autoimmune issue.
This is great.
You could have eczema. You could have psoriasis. You could have. There's multiple things that'll show up as symptoms that basically are leading to dehydration. If I go into the book, I'm like thinking, the book diabetes,
Yes.
asthma.
Yep.
What is it? The one for morning sickness for pregnancy, because now you're basically compensating for another life in you, and if you're not getting enough water, then you're getting sick and nauseous. I mean, there's so many symptoms that will show up in this body.
Muscle pain. Thank you, Chanel.
Muscle pain.
See?
Soreness.
Yeah. Are you able to see the comments on your page as well?
I see them. Yeah. Muscle pain.
Great. So you know what? Look at what you just listed. Okay, and you spoke to this. Once upon a time, and I was in that boat too, say when I was working, as a contractor with the military, a lot of hours I was putting in. So I was tired. I was thirsty. What I would do to be able to function and stay up with it, I would drink 5 hours. I would start the day off, boom, 5 hours. I'm up, I'm getting it. Oh, I'm crashing. Another one, let's go. Okay, not drinking water. Then other health issues would pop up. And so you pointed to, I'm thirsty, I'm tired, I need good water, I don't get the good water. Now I'm, taking energy drinks to compensate for the low energy. Then you have autoimmune issues. You can have something like a psoriasis, and then what do we do? What are we provided with, by big companies is a Band-Aid solution that actually taxes your body's filtration system more and furthers your catastrophic failure. And this is why when you see the list of certain medications pop up, there's all these lists of things, because you're taking yourself more out of balance to put a Band-Aid on one symptom, and it comes with a lot more. And so when I speak to delusion, denial, and blame, and where you have that denial, now the delusion is, okay, this will help fix it, and this doesn't. What it does is it creates more issues. And this is the same, this is the sync. I'm syncretizing all that. It's the same thing that's going on in this space. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from too.
Yeah, and one of the things for eczema and psoriasis, they give you a topical steroid. And if you guys if you guys aren't aware of this already, your skin is the largest organ that you have on your body. So if you will not eat the lotion that you put on your body, then I wouldn't put it on your body.
Consider that, guys.
You absorb all of that. So if you're not going to eat that Bath and Body Works lotion that's got all those funky fragrances and smells good like coconuts and pina colada or whatever, or smells like strawberries and roses, if you're not going to put that in your mouth, don't put it on your body. Period. The end. Don't put that on your body. So are you going to eat those steroids they give you? Hell no, you're not going to eat those steroids you give you, because I guarantee you half of those things that they say on those ingredients you can't even understand or read, or you don't know what it is. And that's part of the blanket society that we live in, right? It's like, oh, we'll just give you this blanket issue, Band-Aid, and then you'll be fine. And then lo and behold, most people, they have negative reactions from those steroids and they get even worse. And I've seen it with a brother of mine who had the topical steroid withdrawal syndrome, and his whole body was just peeling because of the eczema that he had and the steroids they gave him. And it's criminal, man. It's absolutely criminal. And it just stems the one thing. It just comes back to water. I know people want to say, diet, but hey, let's not call it diet. It's like what life are you giving to yourself with the food that you eat, right?
Liberty, you know? Yeah,
Liberty, right?
like the Rasta say.
Liberty.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
so we always focus on the food first, but we're not made of 85% food. We're made of 75 to 80% water. So that's one of the things that is really
Quotable
addressed
right.
in the book, and it's You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. And that book, I believe, is from the 80s.
It's an
And
old
this
book,
study
man.
was done in an Iranian prison
Uh-huh. It's
because
it's phenomenal. It's a great thing for me to come in contact with, and then also, sometimes I fast, right? And so even when you're fasting, you still need to stay hydrated. You can do a dry fast, but
Mhm.
you have to prepare for something like that. So, you have to prepare, and the preparation is actually starting from a hydrated state. There's
Mhm.
certain fruits that you can eat that work with the body in that way, but even a lot of our fruits have been stripped of minerals. We were speaking about that as well. So, you know, we're in a space and time where we still have access to good things, but we have choices to make to introduce those into our body, and it really is going to take some awareness to look and see what is the effect, what is the cumulative effect of the things that I'm introducing to my frame, and that's a part of self-love, right? Is not being in denial if something's not helping you. Now, if you're dealing with addiction, it's a slow process, and in truth, we're all addicts of some sort, you know?
Yes.
And so with addiction and habitual shifting, it's become an addict of something that's beneficial for you. If you can allow me to play with the word a little bit. It's just a habit. What is a habit that you've cultivated that's beneficial and building to the body? That's part of being part of a good relationship and having a good relationship with yourself. And often for quick gratification as opposed to long-term core needs being met, we take the quick thing that tastes good, that has the sweet, salty, crunchy, you know, that thing that's making your brain fire off the food crack, but the result is, in the long term, regret. And so you pay now or you pay later. I'd rather pay a little bit more different in my finances or organize my budget to bring good foods into my body. And I'm not super rigid as well. I'm structured like we want our water to be, but also like we're humans. We've come here to have an experience, to taste. And what's happened is we're being taken advantage of because of our natural proclivities.
Right.
We're here, we're feeling, we're sensual. We want to taste the things that feel good and taste good. But our taste buds have been hijacked. So these are things to just consider and to explore at your pace. But we want to put that and share that from us. It's been said before. We're not saying anything new, but we're saying it now. And this is our turn, to speak to those things in our conviction. And I want you to hear it and receive it and then shift at your own pace. Don't be guilted. This isn't to shame you. There's no need for that. And maybe we're not even saying in a way that comes up for you, but there's other emotions that may come up in the process of really considering the journey that you've been on, wherever you're at currently. If it's not in the healthiest state, fine. Look at those things like a budget. Then what do you do next? We'll provide you with some information, and the steps may not be as difficult as you think. And so then it's up to you in your time, but at least it's here.
Exactly. Think of those things that he just spoke on as an energy budget,
Mm.
right? So is it giving life or taking from you, right? Is it being an electron donor? Or is it being an electron stealer? Is it taking voltage or giving voltage? And you know, we spoke on the body being an electrical system. We want to give our body as much voltage as possible, and that's why I speak on negatively charged water, because that's one of the things that mostly we're comprised of. So if we give ourselves this negatively charged water, then the body is going to be a higher voltage state. And there's Dr. Jerry Tennant, who's basically spoken on this, where you're you have a low voltage in your body. That's when sickness starts to produce. And the body is, the cells are about negative 25 millivolts, right? And if we go below that, if we go into a positive, that's when the sickness starts manifesting. And I believe it takes like negative 50 or negative 75 millivolts to start producing new cells. So it's just really important to consider that you're an electrical system.
Yep.
And why we're an electrochemical system, right? Because there is chemical alchemization that takes place in the body. The problem is we've been so focused on chemicals with the blanket statements of these pharmaceuticals and things that are chemically based, that are petroleum based, that are oil based, that are based of plastic based stuff, right? Fake Barbie world, Barbie world things that we're basically putting into our body that aren't of reality, of nature, of this nature that we're living in. And so when you consider that and you're like, okay, well, what's going to give me electricity? Fruits, vegetables, living water,
Yeah.
you know, and
And
just
I
farms.
would go so far as to say this, and I offer this up in humility. Everything that exists here is alive, and it's all connected to us. And so sometimes we down plastics. It's not so much that plastic is bad in and of itself, because it has a consciousness. It's not dead. Plastic has consciousness. I've been able to connect with the consciousness of all that's here. We're in a system, so all of it's connected. All of it is special. I honor you, plastic. But in the same process, certain things pair properly with other things. And so to have plastic serving a function outside the body, to create it in an amount that's manageable, versus to then overdo it and not take responsibility for our creation, not take responsibility for where the child of us that is plastic proceeds in its process, and then to introduce it in a way that actually is counterintuitive and not good for the body just because someone else is telling you to do it, as opposed to tapping in and to understand our machinery and then being able to stand strong in the sovereignty and wisdom that is innate within us to know, no, this isn't the right thing to do. This is how I want to raise my child plastic. And that's how I'm looking at it for me. That's part of my whole point of practice. It's like, this has come from us. I have the responsibility. I don't expect plastic to fix everything. I'm going to show plastic what to do, and create a different legacy and experience with it. Maybe it's not going to house my water, but maybe it'll house something else,
Right.
And so, hence repurposing. Bro, I think if you're okay with it, let's circle back to this, because I want this to be digestible. And keep in mind, family, I come from an advanced physics background. I'm a health physicist by trade, and I kind of tucked that aside, meaning I was cleaning up radioactive material for all branches of the military for my entire career. I have instrumentation here. I have a portable gamma spectroscopy device, which means I can basically take the fingerprint of an energy signature of a certain radionuclide that's considered special nuclear material or otherwise, and identify it. And then I am trained in being able to not only characterize, identify, do historical assessment, and then containerize, remove contamination, transport the contamination, and then help people in the process of doing it. But that's not what I do. I apply that knowledge to relationship, where I'm, again, identifying the bullshit, the hazardous stuff, containing it by bringing it to the forefront, and then finding a way to then share the process of removal that's beneficial to all involved in the process, and then elevating it to its next position. So it's all doula work. These are all things that go on in the womb, essentially. And so I have a long-term vision, and I see the connection, but we speak to it in this place. So now when I speak to distilling all of that, okay, we're talking about electrons, voltage, and potential, And when people think of negative, again, they think of, they have a negative connotation. So you spoke to energy budget, and can you maybe speak to the dynamic of an electron or voltage, or even that term potential, do you feel? And I don't know how clear my question's coming across, but just for a way for people to think. You said donor and electron steal it. So what's the benefit of electrons to us?
Well, electrons are part of the spark of life, right? We think of the atom. We have the nucleus, the proton, and the electron. And the electrons are usually always on the outer shell of things. And basically, when we all have these within our cells, if we break down our cells to the cellular level, they're all microscopic atoms, right? It's basically a nucleus, a proton, and an electron. And when a cell becomes a free radical, it's losing its electrons.
Yeah.
And so if it's a free radical, now that free radical is going to go and it wants to take from the cell next to it. And so then that's when you have that oxidative stress happening now, because now your body is looking to take and take and take and take and take from itself. It's taking from itself,
Absolutely.
right? And so if those are out of balance, it wants to take. But then what we can do with the things that we put into our body, we put into our energy budget, we're giving ourselves back that thing to allow the cells to function properly so they no longer have to take from one another. They are in a homeostasis era where they're not taking from anything. They're just in a balance. They're in a balanced state of peace. It's like an inner peace that, you know, the body's in, and it's like, cool, I don't need to take from anything, man. I'm very happy where I am right now. I've got everything I need. I've got all the components to make and allow myself to function here in this beautiful relationship that I have.
Beautiful, beautiful, brother. And so you see, I hope you guys, family, you see the correlation here, okay? Now we're speaking to, we can automatically connect this on a larger scale. I used to teach a course just to teach people how to work in the military within the license that we had to work with a certain nuclear material. And so within the course, we'd be teaching about protons, atoms, neutrons, gammas, etc., right? Beta, which would be the electron, and I would have to humanize it, just like our ancestors would do, okay? We anthropomorphize the whole thing. So to give human techniques to it, now we're speaking to a certain state, a state of abundance. We come out of a state of abundance, and now we're in a state of thirst, absence, misalignment, and so it's like one person robbing because they're in that scarcity. But you can actually, this can go all the way down to our cellular, to our atomic makeup, to where there's an environment of scarcity, and so things are being snatched. When you look at the periodic table, the difference between one element and another are, you know, it being in a certain state. So when you rob certain things, you change it. You change how it's navigating and what it is. And that's part of the alchemy. Snatch a certain number of electrons, protons, neutrons, you know, and you change the structure and you change its expression, or you change what can be expressed through it. And this is the same thing that Anthony's speaking about in the body. So we're working at macro to deal with the micro within our frame, then to once again affect the macro in the world. So if your mind's in a good space, if your body's in a healthy space, if you're, as we would say, if your cup is full, then you're going to operate differently than you would if your cup was, in truth, you know, lacking in some way, you know. And so I'm happy to share this, and I appreciate Lauren's mention as well. Yes, we're definitely overflowing with vitality, and we want to flow that into you in this regard, and also receive. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah. That's great, bro. The neutron, proton, electron. You know, we're speaking in the classical physics way, because I know sometimes we get into quantum. That's another thing. But really, there's a structure that allows us to function optimally, that allows consciousness to work through this antenna. We're even speaking to the nervous system, right? We didn't even touch on the current state of trauma, PTSD, nervous system issues, and other things that help to fortify the body. Your nervous system is part of the body, the antenna for your consciousness. And so if the antenna is in good condition, it can receive and it can move through different transmissions, you know. And so that's something to consider as well, is that your antennas are being fucked with, and if they're being messed with, you can't receive the right radio station.
Right.
You can't, you know, it's going to be a little bit staticky. Yeah. So we turn the knob a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, man. And that's exactly it. I mean, that's exactly it, right? And if we just speak on the nervous system a little bit, right? The nervous system is housed in the waters of the body, and then we have the fascia, which hold a lot of the trauma because then it's stored in the tissues. And you know, I won't take this as my own quote, but if you've heard Troy Casey, he says your issues are stored in your tissues. So
like that.
if you don't move the tissues, then you're going to have more issues. And the ideal thing is like movement, right? And it's like we didn't even consider movement as a way to get the body properly electrical, right? That's another way to spark up that voltage, you know, spark up the voltage.
I love that too. Spark it up. He says issues in the tissues, and think about what we utilize to cleanse. When we're removing things from the body, phlegm, the first thing that we go for, some of us, you know, I've seen in the communities, and when we're in ceremony, some people, they'll do like you use what you can, but the typical behavior that we've grown up with in this, you know, age that we're in is, you need to blow your nose, you grab a tissue. So the issues are in the tissues. You're releasing a certain issue from your body, in the form of phlegm, of mucus, and you're putting it into that tissue. So tissue is a matrix for storing certain things. You can store it within this body. You can store it in other tissue. So it's a great thing. So I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah, and thank the author, of course.
And just remember, guys, like mucus isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know it gets highlighted, like that it's a bad thing. Mucus is a buffer to the acid that's present in your body. And so then the mucus then takes that acid and then gets rid of it. So now if you have an overproduction, that's where we want to start considering, hey, what's going on here? But, mucus isn't always bad. It's just your body's natural way of buffering the overacidity that you may be experiencing. So, yeah, I mean, it's...
So think of it again. When he says a buffer, another way to think of it, because we're always trying to we can be deep, but you can be deeply insane. So we want clarity to help us to penetrate the depths. And so he's saying, think of it also as a medium, right? It's a medium that's serving a purpose as a buffer, but if you pay attention to that medium and what it's doing, then you can have information to assess the state of your body, where you're at. And so, no, it's not the enemy. It has information, and it's important to look. When you blow your nose, at least when I do, I usually look at it and I'm like, okay, if it's a certain color, I know I'm contending with something. And so I think that's great that you spoke to that, because we also want to reconceptualize. Yeah, we still do that. We look. It's good to look at what's coming out of the frame. Even as a little kid, I go to the toilet and I'm like, "Mommy, look!" And she's like, "Good for you. You made it," etc. And it's still important. It's still good to look at your biota. And in ceremony, when we work with, say, a combo or other medicines, or whenever someone purges, when I hold ceremony for them, whatever the medicine medium, I always look, because it tells me something. It tells me what they've been contending with. But it's looking over a period, so I'm able to extrapolate. And then, of course, we can dialogue and get the confirmation. It's good to look. And it's good to be clear and on certain things and not project, this is a bad thing. It's a thing and it carries some information. Can you interpret the information? So all of this is for your good. All of these things that we're navigating with as a consciousness is for our expansion. I would love if you talk a little bit about, now we've spoken to water, we've given a little bit about, the electrical system, speaking to the nervous system, which is part of that, the tissues that, like, we stack it up, and so we want to come from that place. We're going to get into cycles a little bit. And it's funny because when they speak to electricity in hertz, we're still speaking to cycles per second,
Yes.
Cycles. So a cycle, a rotation, an orbit, per se, that repeats itself, that actually is the expression of a frequency. But now, we'd love to speak to, I'd love if you talk a little bit about your thoughts on the cycle of men, because we're going to talk about that in our gathering.
Yes.
And we had a men's group yesterday, and that was a very hot topic to bring up, because the male consciousness is starting to recognize and look into it.
So I'm going to pause here for a moment, because I have a cycle of you needing to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Do that thing. I'll hold the house down, Okay, family. And so, again, I thank everyone who's tuned into this live. Thank you for staying on so long, popping in and out. My brother's on that expression cycle. And so here we are, preparing for the Obsidian Soul Lounge, reunited after so long, myself and Anthony, who we hold each other in high esteem. We have great builds metaphysically, great builds just in the proper physical, about just the experience that we're having as men, as beings in this world, as consciousness, reflecting to one another, and wanting to fortify and to honor the vessels that we have by putting the best things in there, by cultivating great relationships, by understanding even what is a relationship. Everything that we really deal with here within this realm, within this matrix, within this beautiful grand womb, with our wonderful Mother Earth, has to do with and is connected to water and electricity and consciousness being held in the water. Water has, especially good water, holds a certain geometry, and those geometries can be expressed. When we speak to the water, it responds. Being frozen, you can also see that. So Anthony's back. I was just, speaking to the nature of our bond and how happy I am to be able to share this with you. And then the Obsidian Soul Lounge, which is going to take place next Wednesday, 6 p.m. And I think, what is that, 4 p.m. your time? Yeah.
Yes.
And so this is, we call it a mastery class, not a master class, but a mastery class where we open it up for dialogue, for questions. We're speaking to our avatars in the ways of our waters. And also it's taking metaphysics and relating that to relationship in a distilled way. So not so much using a bunch of big words to seem a certain way. In Hawaii, they would say tarang tarang, like not Nelly, not to have my nose up, but, I want to learn these things to be able to create legacy of understanding, to reflect what's coming through my consciousness and create the space for us to amplify our channel and receive, which means you get to participate. You bring your questions. You find out how this topic relates to your relationship to yourself, your partners, and then you take that and you have the experience with it, and you come back in the next mastery class and we share. And then, of course, we have a couple of other goodies in the process for those who tune in, a little bit of a concert, Kora concert for you. And yeah, the ability to kind of tap in and to receive. So it's a mastery class, the Obsidian Soul Lounge, a little bit different space of learning. And it's live, online, on Zoom. And you sign up, you register, and then also here in Tulum for my family in Tulum. So we get together, and this is how we bring Tulum to the world, and also we bring the world to Tulum. So we don't get too floaty off here and all the things. We need to know what's really going on, and I want this connection while we have it to grow. And water is where we got to start, bro. Yeah.
Absolutely. The great communicator.
Great.
So I know before I took my little pause there, we were going to start speaking on cycles and how men actually have cycles as well. I know that
because we have waters as well,
Yes, we know that the women are ruled by a moon cycle. If we were properly using the proper calendar, we would have 13 months and 28 days to honor the moon cycle that they experience. And the reality is that's for their womb, right? That's for the renewal of their womb. Now, men also have wombs, but we don't have menstrual cycles. Men do not have menstrual cycles. Men do not experience that same type of cycle that a woman does. We do, in fact, though, experience a different cycle within the body. Wow. And this can be also spoken on how we have and make sure to maintain the voltage of homeostasis properly in that body. Because the reality is we have a cycle within our waters, and it happens when the sun sign, your sun sign, and the moon has entered it, right? So for me personally, if we're speaking on a Western tropical astrology, it'd be when the moon goes into Aries. Okay. Now, I prefer to follow the true sky and follow what the sky is telling me. So when I was born, my sun was in the constellation of Pisces and Cetus. So when that moon goes into Pisces, I really start holding devotion to myself. Now, this isn't something that you just do when it goes. It's a full devotion to yourself that whole month. Because ultimately, if your voltage is low, if you're not well, you will not experience what they call as the syncretism, or the Christ oil within you will not be properly experienced, and you'll lose it, and you'll lose that opportunity to then be one in communion with the inner Christ within you. Not that you're ever disconnected from that, but there's a time when it's heightened. And there's a book I'll reference called The God Design by Kelly Marie Kerr, and you can go into there, or you can go to Santos Bonacci and learn about what he's speaking on. But this is a natural cycle that man and woman experience. So women experience their womb cycle, and they also experience this water cycle within them. And it's important to really take care of your body so you can experience this. Now, when I speak on the,
this is the inner alchemy you're speaking to, right? And so really and then also, Santos Bonacci with the syncretism and understanding how everything is atom, or like speaking to this human body, and now all these things and all these lessons and a lot of the deeper levels of what's being spoken to us through the religions are actually, they're speaking esoterically, right? And it's still relating back to how to function and operate this body, and then to navigate and run the consciousness through, just as you would, I'll just leave it at that because I'd love for you to continue. Thank you.
Yeah. So that inner alchemy that's going to take place, right? It's taking the lead and turning it into gold, right? And that's essentially what you're looking to do, and that's the refinement. So that's that devotion to yourself every month. And I know that we spoke on it, right? We talked about the 7 deadly sins, and I love when you brought it in when we had that conversation, the 7 deadly sine waves, right? So it's a wave. So these waves that you may experience throughout your cycle of maybe lust or gluttony or pride or anger or whatever it may be, there's going to be waves that you'll experience these specific different emotions. And if you give into these emotions more or less closer to when it's time for you to devote yourself, when that moon hits your sun sign, it's likely that you will not experience that inner devotion or that inner alchemy in that month. And it's not good or bad. It's just something to be aware of, that the more and more you become aware of this, the more and more your inner refinement will take place. And so that's what it really comes down to, right? It's these waves that you're going to experience, and like, oh yeah, you know, like you're gonna, I mean, like as a man, I notice there's a time where there's a heightened sense and my hormones are a little more activated, and I notice that, hey, those women are a lot more attractive than they normally have been to me. What's going on? Now, what you do with that wave is up to you. You can either turn that back to yourself and give it to yourself, or you can go experience a bond with a person if you've built cultivated something with them, or as we've seen in this experience, some men have been grasped by the pornography, wave, and sometimes that gets there. So it's not good or bad. It's just, hey, be aware of where your energy's going and what's taking from you. So,
and there are things that are set up, so when we speak to the sine wave, we speak to this, can also be folded in on itself to create a circle. So when we look at, so there's a lot of symbolism that you can actually, one can break down, and we may do this in further classes. I've been studying some materials. There's a man named Kenneth Wheeler who speaks to magnetism and electromagnetism, the dielectric, and so really speaking from the unseen to the seen, right? And it's high physics, but of course I have a proclivity for that. And then also, Bro Sanchez, and it's another person that we'll have on hopefully eventually, and Archaic. So there's like a lot of beautiful names that I won't go so far into dropping, but I always want to credit sources who have helped to open up, including Santos Bonacci, my understanding, along with things that came to me. So you take a sine wave. I'm just gonna throw something out there. It's like an S, okay? And you take this sine wave, and let's say you to repeat it in an iteration. Well, these geometries, we're so advanced, but we don't take advantage of it with this imagination. You can actually draw something and then flip it within your mind to see the other shapes that are created. So a bunch of sine waves, we say the deadly sins, the deadly signs, if you would, all right? They can create a structure that if turned a certain way turns into a vortex that could be a trap. And so there are many different ways to look at these things, and I want to get into that at some point. But for right now, we have things that are in a phase, and you get into a certain phase. You say you're going through a certain phase, right? I went through a phase where I was addicted to pornography. I went through a phase when I was eating too many of these things. I went through a phase when these are phases that are an expression of a certain sign structure or cube structure that is able to navigate and trap your consciousness to have a certain experience. And or maybe your consciousness isn't trapped, but you're moving through that. And when you come out of that phase, you're in a new space. The life process is a phased process. When you're experiencing resonance with someone, you're in a certain phase. You're phase locked. You come out of that phase. And so I wanna drop these into consciousness and let them unfold in your own process. But this is where we're gonna go with some of it. But to keep it simple, even when we say a sign, a sink, a sinkhole, the hole in the sink is similar, to one aspect of our toroidal structure, to where energy is moving up in a certain way and it's spiraling down to a certain space and then opening and spiraling up again, right? And so there's a lot of similar structures, similar occurrences in the geometries that have a function in the motion in the way that they navigate our consciousness when we come into contact with them. And this is blown out, verbose way of explaining, some of what we're getting into and just dropping that in the bucket. Or a simple way to say is we're speaking to geometries, how they express themselves, how that relates to you, so to know the geometries and what they're meant to do because it relates to the body, and then how to make the best of it because it's still a relationship, a vessel going somewhere, relation, connection, a conjugate nature, right? So even speaking to women, men, womb, men, menstrual cycle. Who has the menstrual cycle? The womb, men, has the menstrual cycle. The women, men have a different womb. It's unseen. Just men. The word we use is men as opposed to womb men. So there's a lot that we get to break down that is right in our face that will help us to have a different, hopefully, understanding of what's actually going on. Right. And then we take that understanding and we have but to choose what to do with it. Back to the waters, bro. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that really comes down to the nature of, acidic or alkaline. And we want the lymphatic system, right? Because they say the lymphatic system is the light body. We want that to be clear. We want that to be alkaline in nature. We want it to be clear of impurities. And this is why there's great medicines that you've spoken on, specifically with combo and stuff that help clear the lymphatic system
with the light body.
Yeah.
Amazing, brother. Scott, what's up, bro?
So just being aware of these different things and really not shaming yourself for where you're eating, where you're at right now. Just know that, hey, most of the stuff that we encounter is very acidic in nature. Mm-hmm. Very acidic, and like the body's never going to come out of a 7.4 space, but the important thing is to keep the lymphatic system clear, keep the body, keep the endocrine system clear, keep the other systems clear so the whole body can properly function, and water is a big part in that. Let
me just honor my brother Scott, who just popped in. Scott, I hope you're able to rewind and catch the live. It's also YouTube, good family. Because Scott is also one of the brothers here who's been very instrumental in creating men's space. And so, Scott, we're speaking actually to cycles and how that relates to the men, the man's water, honoring our women, our sisters, the divine feminine, and how it's expressed and how we're connected. This is where I'm going to go with, of course, manbodiment, and even with mentorship, I'm going to speak to that. And we spoke a little bit about nervous system regulation, down-regulating. That's going to come up in the Obsidian Soul Lounge. So that's going to be a place for us to dive deeper. Introducing you to my good brother Anthony from Cali, who's going to be co-hosting the next segments of that show, that gathering, which will take place online and also with our community. And I want to do some things specifically to bring more of the metaphysical wisdom to the men in our men's groups. So it's a process. We're all in different spaces. But speaking to our waters, I think, is a great way to really see how connected we are to the feminine and to speak to where we're actually at in this expression of life. And then also to help us to honor that within ourselves, our waters, our divine waters, and how it's complementary with that of our sisters or the beings that are in women's bodies and how they function and everything in between. Naweed, what's up, my brother? Well, Timur, aloha. So, Anthony, thank you for letting me just make that brief one because, Anthony is going to be visiting at some point, so we'll hold some things for the men to really drop in and go as deep as they need to go so that they have this information in their waters. They can unlock this memory. And I think it was really powerful that you brought up the lymphatic system because many of us have sat with combo and I've utilized it for a lymphatic system flush. And what it is, why it changes your pneuma, that negative energy, right, is it because it's helping to cleanse your light body. And all of a sudden, things shift. That's not the only thing that's used to cleanse the light body. You need not take any medicines, anything external. We've got everything that we need in here, but there are some things that can give us a little boost in the cleansing and removal. And so I love, and I haven't heard anyone else but you actually speak to lymphatic system and its connection to the light body. So I really appreciate this, Anthony. Love, I really, really am happy to be here with you, man.
Yeah, it's been an honor, man. It's been great. And I'm excited for what we get to share in the Soul Lounge coming up next Wednesday.
Fun.
It's just space for us to go a little deeper than what we've been doing at this point. And yeah, man, I mean, this is great. This is stuff that men also get the opportunity to know, because from what I've experienced is they say the woman is the only one as the seer, and I was like, well, I'm pretty tapped into that. So I, you know, I've been very tapped into that, and I've been, really honoring that feminine nature that we hold. It's not to say that, men don't have, men do have a feminine nature. It's not that they need to express it physically. But sometimes that's how it gets expressed. But ultimately that's that's the magnetism and the electromagnetism that we have, right? It's the,
Let me drop a mini bomb, So we're speaking to men and women. We are in, of course, we call it a matrix. Even if you leave, it used to be, oh, we're leaving the matrix to come live a life in the jungle. Still a matrix. No matter where you go, you're still in the construct. Within the construct, within this dimension, because there are many different dimensions, we speak to oneness it's in a thought of oneness, but we experience it based on certain things that we go through, which is the truth. But we're in a space where we have been split up into many different prisms that can become prisons if you just adhere to what you're seeing on the external and lose sight with your inner side of the truth. I don't know if any of you seen the movie Minority Report, or you've ever heard of, the fates and how we understand the woman as the oracle, but often what's shown to us in a matter of truth is maybe the dynamic. So men are also containing the oracle property and the ability, all right, to see, because we are composed of things, but we're being expressed in different ways. The beginnings of this being that we have before being split into different things was one thing. So we all, proceed from the hermaphrodite. What up, my man? Momo's in here too. So hey, he gave me the go ahead to drop the science. So proceeding from the hermaphrodite, think of us as magnets. When you break a magnet up, the polarity is created. Okay, you have, and I'm using that loosely because if you look deeper into it, it's something else, right? But you have a magnet now. You try to put a magnet that you split that was once one thing back together, and there's a difficulty, right? But it can be done. That's called fusion, okay? As opposed to confusion, which we're navigating in right now, not knowing actually what we are and how we relate to each other. So the process that we're going through in this dimension of being split up into so many different pieces we're dealing with wedge issues, we're dealing with different politics, we're dealing with all the different things that the ego brings to us to convince us, to protect us in the process of having this experience of reflecting as something different as we come to the ultimate truth of our connection. And so now when we speak to the electricity and magnetism, and we speak to men and women and femininity and masculinity, well, we don't really understand. We're not navigating as a majority with an understanding of what we truly are, what we were before, what we proceed from, and that cuts away a lot of things, And so we both have similar tendencies, but we have also our strong points because we're one thing that's been split, but we complement each other, however you come together. So we have a complementary nature for the experience of being in relationship, of navigating the ship of relation, that vessel, in the direction of whatever destination your soul has chosen for this incarnation in the process of its full progression back to in the cycle of unification, like unification in form, right? And so we experience these things in the medicines, we experience this in lovemaking, we experience this in self-love and in just the things that light us up, and then we're super forgetful. So some of the things that are going to help us to remember are the things that we'll go over in the Obsidian Soul Lounge. One of them is the simplest thing that we have access to, water. Though we don't have the same access as we have had in the past. Why? Why are we being made to forget? It's cool. We're the ones making ourselves to forget, to give ourselves the opportunity to remember. And so this is what we're speaking to in this live. And, just reconsidering and being open to recontextualizing, not throwing away, but recontextualizing our understanding, going deeper and challenging you to go deeper into your understanding of what is it to be in a man's body, in a woman's body, in everything that exists, containing consciousness in its various expressions, in the process of what are we so different? What are we here to do, and how are we related to each other? Where do we want to go? So this is really what we're talking to. And so when we speak to magnetism, I think it's appropriate because we have electromagnetism. We have the dielectric, which is going from, again, the ether into the seen. You go from the unseen to the seen. Most of everything exists in the unseen. We just focus and hone in. And what you see in the seen is the focused action of consciousness to manifest itself here. And so I'm doing this in connection with my brother. And so as not to be too on one, because I get excited, I'm gonna turn the channel down a little bit and hand it back to you, my brother, and hope that you guys are receiving some of what I'm speaking to and you look into it so that we can come into a state of harmony with one another. We need to know what we are, when we are, where we are, why we are. Some of these questions, they can be answered. It's not everything's a great mystery. We are in the time of demystifying so that we can get back into the true wisdom of what it is to navigate consciousness here in this realm and do what we've come here to do. So let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's
do
it.
Yeah,
I mean, from this point on, I mean, is there anything else you want to cover at this point?
How you feeling? Yeah, I mean, well,
I mean, I could keep talking.
What's up?
I said I could always keep talking. But
let's bust out another maybe 15 minutes. I don't know the exact time, but I think we can.
150 or about 150 here.
150. Let's round it out at about maybe 15 more minutes.
Okay.
And there are some questions that I have, and we're not giving up all the goods because we just basically got into the cycle of man. We were talking about that in the mentorship gathering last night, and that's very interesting because it's coming into our awareness. And so what would you say are some things in your process to even identifying that you have a cycle? How'd that come about in your journey? And then what have you done? Have you tracked certain things to then understand like where you're at in your process?
That's a great question.
And what does it look like for you? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I honestly was introduced to this through a woman. One of my good friends taught me about the sacred secretion and kind of put me onto that. And, you know, from there, I just would start being more conscious of it. And then there was times where I could feel when the moon was in the specific sign, and just like coming into that alignment, like being able to feel, hey, wait, you know, I think the moon's actually in this space. And I would look up and use the Skyview app, and I'd be correct. And I'd be like, okay, so, you know, tapping into intuition, right? So in the body, knowing that, hey, this is around the time when this cycle is occurring, and there's, you know, sometimes you can recognize the patterning or just the way you feel. And ultimately now, like what I've started doing is just to even remind myself is now I kind of have looked and I've written down on the calendar, like, hey, this is the day that this occurred. Be ready for this in 28 days, right? Or,
Great.
you know, so.
And I'll just share what Anthony's speaking to, because I'm also getting my little download, and we'll speak to this in the gathering, is he's speaking to intuition. You're not just having your intuition and ignoring it, which so many men do, but then exploring what his intuition is telling him, verifying by looking at, you know, something over a period of time, and then taking an informed action based on intention that's aligned with him. And so that quick thing, because we'll get into it in just that way when we have a gathering. Yeah.
Yeah, and so as you continue, I mean, this has been something that I've been doing over the past couple of years. Now I'm really starting to tune into it where I'm like, okay, what's going on? When is this occurring? You know, what's going on with this specific cycle, or what am I tuning into? Oh, the energy feels this way. What is this? You know, because ultimately, you know, we don't want to give our power away to the external, but ultimately that external is telling us something that's taking place internally, right?
Yeah.
Internal cycle, that internal clock. So the external can be a mirror of what's going on internally, and realizing that, you know, the moon, you know, we don't have to give our power away to the moon, but the moon still does control the tides of this ocean, and you have tides of your own ocean within you. So when you tune into your own tides and your own tune, you start to become more aware of that.
Excellent, brother. This is great. And also, many of you may know I surf. Anthony surfs. We've even surfed some of the same waters. So for me, recognizing the cycles, I started looking at it when I was in Bali, because I really was hitting up dawn patrol like every day, being in the waters for 4 hours. So I'd get up there before most of the people in Canggu were up and moving, although they get up early too. And I'm in the water, surfing, just learning by being in the waters, going through all my emotion, all my things, and then starting to really develop a relationship with the water, learning how to approach her, how to navigate within, the waves, where to go in, where not to go in. And then I'm looking at the surfers and wondering why they're not jumping in right away. It's because they're paying attention and looking at certain things and clocking the periodicity, if I can use that word, the period of the waves and when the wave they want comes in. So there's a lot that came up. But what I also noticed was moon, certain way, waves, hellified, amazing certain way, or not. And then I come out and I'm interacting with a lot of people there. And I'm like, wow, like the men and the women are, at a certain way. They're in a certain space within themselves and how they're relating. It's either really crazy or not so crazy or flat, just like the ocean. So I'm like, whoa, okay, it's not just the women. First, I got a great gauge of where the women were at in that space. But then also I saw, wow, I see this in the men to a degree as well. And then feeling that within myself. So I love that you talked about not so much demonizing the things that are around us. Yes, the moon is a base and there's other things going on there, but it still has a function. So what is the true relationship at play right now between myself and the celestial bodies, as they're being called? And then, because that's there. And then taking that and learning about everyone around you and within. So you're utilizing in metaphysics what would be called the law of correspondence. And so this is where we get to distill these things to know how to use all these things to make your life better. Because then you took that to make your life better, to change your relationships with yourself, right? To honor your waters, to see what degree that magnetism and that pull affects you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think, what would you say has shifted for you since then, since beginning to look at your cycles as a man?
I can notice, like, specifically when maybe I'm more or less eating my emotions instead of sitting with them. I can notice if I'm noticing like where I might be more lustful and being aware of that, being where I might, be negating some emotions such as anger or what waves are coming in. I mean, it really gives you the opportunity to know yourself a little deeper, because ultimately that's what we're here to uncover, right? Is how we operate. And just, yeah, I mean, it's just a tool to know yourself deeper, and the ability to know yourself is super powerful, because the reality is we've been taught to not know ourselves. We've been taught to focus in on external things. What's going on in the news? What's going on in this place? What's going on with that person? What's going on with this celebrity? What's going on with you?
Boom.
What's going on with you, man? Like, you're the person that you're going to be in the relationship with the most out of this time that you are here. And if you can't even tap in and be like, well, why am I angry around this time? Or why do I feel sad around this time? Or why am I lustful around this time? Or why am I heightened sexually? Or why, these things are naturally occurring in all of us. And sometimes we suppress these expressions. And when we suppress the expressions, well, then they get pushed down, and then sometimes they bubble up, and then they can come out way more, right? And then you have the extremities of like, oh, I was super lustful that one, and I actually acted on it, or I was super angry that time, and I acted on it, and it was because it bubbled up because I suppressed it, and I ate all these emotions, and then next thing you know, I like exploded onto somebody. So it's just like just being able to track what's really going on with yourself. And I mean, am I perfect at it? No, but I'm becoming more self-aware of what's going on, because I've opted into to know myself more. And or where am I avoiding things? Why am I avoiding things? So it's just
Powerful, man. Yeah. And this is, we're talking, I'm in the men's space. I think that this year I want to dedicate more time to the fellas. I've been doing a lot to help both. And I'm still helping both by dedicating a little bit more of myself to working with our brothers as we're redefining, honoring, the best of what masculinity has been, for us, and then redefining what it's going to be, because we're at the tip of the spearhead. This is our time to take responsibility and redefine, and then also honor, the amazing wisdom that has continued to be passed down and shared with us through the feminine, to as we get to know our feminine, within the Tao Te Ching, one of my favorite books, Lao Tzu, the man purported to be Lao Tzu, says, know the masculine, but keep to the feminine. And this is a special principle in martial arts as well, and in samurai practices as well as Wing Chun. It's, again, being able to move around. We know to create that structure, but also we know the power of being receptive, and to be able to take that wisdom and to hold it and to cultivate our waters, because it's the soft thing that wears things down. It's not the rigid, bamboo stick that stick breaks, but the stick that can bend in the wind, has a long life. And so we're cultivating that. And I love, I love this knowledge of self, and the connectivity that you have and that you speak from, and also as a man speaking to eating your emotions as well, because there's a lot of things that we go through that we don't shine a light on that our sisters go through. And so if we were just aware that we're all going through so much, be it body issues, be it how we stuff things, the emotional molestations that men have gone through in their process of wanting to become a man, and not knowing what that means and entails, many men having mother and father figures stripped away. And so it's like wild boys, trying to not kill Piggy, in Lord of the Flies. Like, we're coming into a space where the information's there, the reverence for the feminine, and a little bit more understanding as to our connection is there, and then us navigating from that space of knowing. And all it is for our brothers to be in that space, and they wake up. They're waking up, Ding, the light bulb goes off.
Right.
Yeah. And it's part of the cycle that we're in as men, and it's part of the wisdom of those waters being shared, and us coming back into devotion of, of course, the goddess, as well as all that precedes.
Yeah, and I love that you tapped on what Lao Tzu said, because essentially what that means is, like, know the masculine but be in the feminine, is like be a warrior in a garden and not a gardener in a war.
That's right.
Right? And from
the workshops.
And some of the things, I've had the opportunity to kind of learn some things from Wing Chun. We had an opportunity to kind of learn, like, the dragon stance, I believe it was. But essentially, the whole point of Wing Chun is to protect the center line, right? It's always to protect the center line, as opposed to being, going after. It's always a defense. It's being there, knowing that you are lethal, but also that you're not going to attack. You're not seeking war. If war comes to you, then you know where to protect, and that's always the center. And that's can be spoken that, the center is what? Peace. We're always protecting our peace. So
I love that you're speaking to this. You know that I'm doing, we're going to have a retreat, and I have a Sifu coming, who's a Tai Chi. He's teaching Tai Chi, Qigong, but we're also going to be getting the men trained tactically as well. The principles of tactical protection, and as part of that, we'll have the knife fighting, Eskrima, or the Kali, the Filipino martial arts, tied into Wing Chun. And so it's, again, a men's immersion where we dive into this, but from the space of introduction to those principles of protecting that center line. You have your blue bottle. Could you lift it up for us real quick? Is it getting close to you? All right, so let's just use this as just an example of our connection with the feminine. We have this blue bottle that's maintaining a structure, but within is the water of life, And so it can take any shape, but it's filled with those waters, and it's protecting those waters. And even the light that shines through the prism of that, strengthened masculine expression, it in the right frequency is benefiting those waters. And this is kind of where we're moving with our consciousness. Thank you, brother. So that's an example of the structure that's important and necessary to be honored in its right composition, and the benefit of the waters and what it holds inside. And then that flow, we're drinking it, and receiving it.
Yes.
I got my blue bottle at home too. I'm about to start working with that bad boy again.
Does the original color of the original color of the ocean to bring in that consciousness.
There. Can you, before we go, of course, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your work with Kangen, and also how people can get a hold of you, and like what does it look like? You know, you're in a space, you want some waters, you haven't ever even given much thought to the importance of it. You're just on the Gatorades. Okay, now we introduce them to you, and then like what does the process look like, and how can they benefit from you more deeply in your knowledge of water?
First off, coming with an open mind and an open heart, and realizing that what you know hasn't always been the truth, because that's where I had to come from. And yeah, just realizing that, hey, maybe, maybe you're interested and maybe it's not for you. At the end of the day, it's not for everybody. But the reality is it is for everybody. It's just maybe you're not ready for it yet. Maybe you're not ready to receive it. But just reach out to me here on Instagram. You can text me. I have my number in my bio link. That number
Right
that you
on.
can text me at, where you can text me. You can call me there. You can schedule a call with me. And you can just come with an open mind and an open heart, and I can just share information with you. Just allow for you to see it first, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And I can speak on it and beat it over your head as much as I want, but you need to see with your eyes first.
Oh, and I love to put it out there because we've talked about you coming down to Tulum as well, and I think you're going to have I personally believe you're going to have a strong impact on our situation with the waters here. In at least being able to craft and share some things in a space with the men that also brings their attention to that, men and the women, but also just with the knowledge that you have and who you are. And so I'm just going to put it out there into the ethers now and invite any of you guys who have a plan at some point in the next year to come down to Tulum. Maybe this is something you'd like to experience in person. I would love to do a gathering. It could be a set of workshops or even a 2-day water dive retreat. What would be a good amount of days to get together if we were to do a retreat that you think could really switch and impact a person's experience? Exposing them to the water, sharing the information. I'll bring the other ceremonial aspects.
3 days is a great start to experience the water. Just experiencing the water and high vibrational foods, and then if we want to eventually do a deeper immersion, then we do a 5-day. But 3 days really just with the water and high vibrational foods, you'll start to really notice a difference in your body, and especially for communing with sacred waters on the outside as well. I mean, just put that focus on it. It'll completely shift somebody's just ideology of what they've known with water, and basically kind of bring them to a new awareness.
Do you think, would we want to consider this gathering more of a detox experience, like a learning detox, or do you think that'd be too heavy? I personally would love to do detox with you.
I mean, I think we could do that, and we could even just go where we're, one day's maybe a water fast. Maybe, if the men are open to it, we could do a 3-day water fast. I mean, that would completely skyrocket everybody. And then as we, come out of the fast, you come into fruits, and you come in with light things, or, you do 2-day fast, and then the next day we incorporate fruit, and it really just depends on.
I like that. I think, great. So maybe we'll talk about that too, all right? Because we have the space, that we can do something. And then when you're fasting, your retreat's not going to be so much. How many meals? I can cook. I can chef. Danny's a chef. She can still cook for us as well.
I could too.
And we got fruits. We got plenty fruits, brah. As they say out here, and the simple kind. So we can certainly do something like that. That's beneficial and at a great cost for the folks, and really just build something special together, and then graduate it. So I'm gonna look to. It's so doable. The space that I'm in right now we can hold almost up to 20 people. It's a compound, So let's think about that as well. And I just want to flow that in. And those of you who are listening, if that's something that you're interested in, reach out to me so we can pinpoint a good time of year. It's very doable, especially if you're coming from the States. Tulum is super easy. We have transportation set. So it's a matter of, you setting a little bit aside, getting here, being willing to go through an experience of cleansing and be good to your body, and let the land do its work on you. And I have good brothers here, who can hold the space, and we can dialogue and really, really have a nice transformative experience.
Wonderful, man. That sounds like a plan. Sending it out into the ethers in the quantum realm.
In the waters, baby.
Yes, indeed.
Avatar's detox. Yeah. So, okay. And as for me, I just want to thank you again. Like you said, you can get a hold of him. You can find out a lot more with an open mind about how he works with providing you and creating a space for you to receive fantastic waters that are conducive to your body and what that looks like in its various expressions. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
feel
and I mean, and if you feel incorporate this as a side project for yourself, where you're just incorporating with what you're already doing, I can show you how to do that. I
right?
can show you how to help other people come and commune with this water. It's, you know, it's not from just, it's for everybody to benefit from. That's the beautiful nature of how this business works, is there's enough for everybody to go around.
It's beautiful. Thank you, brother.
Thank
Was there anything that you wanted to ask me? I know I was super excited and chatty on this one, and we'll do more of these, but and I know we're running at the tail end.
No, you know what? I'm going to save whatever I have to ask you for our experience. That way
Great.
we, you know, give people the opportunity to really come over there. And yeah, I mean, I think we, I think we had a beautiful balance where you'd kind of flow into the knowledge I was sharing, and then it was really coinciding with one another. I
Yeah.
don't have anything to ask you at this point. I'm very appreciative for the space and being able to speak on what we've spoken on, and just making more of our brothers and sisters aware of what's available.
Yeah. I love you, man. I'm super excited. So let me tell you guys again, this Wednesday, okay, we're going to have the Obsidian Soul Lounge. This is in person in Tulum and online. I have sign up. He will also have sign up in our bios. We'll post in our stories in the countdown a link that you click to Ticket Teller. Get your ticket. You can buy tickets for other people as well. And if you're unable to attend, I'll save the recording because we're going to record on Zoom. Now, this space is going to be a space for you to also bring your questions. We're going to open up. It's going to be a container to where it's just us, of course, sharing and getting into, again, understanding these bodies that we're in, understanding the way of the water within us, our waters, and also, you know, we'll have some poetry and live choral music as well, because it's a lounge. It's a mastery lounge. And so we open up our channels to receive. We open up the space for you to receive. I myself am located here in Tulum. The work that I do is manyfold, but it's really one thing. You know, I'm interested in you having the most fulfilling life and doing that in a way that still speaks to living in your truth, expressing in your authenticity, and being able to digest or integrate what's going on. So I work in the field of medicine as a holistic therapist, like working with plant medicines as well as the medicine of the human. I do group therapy. I'm initiated in the Bwiti, so I have, you know, the ability to work with the medicine called Iboga, and, you know, also Bufo if need be. But that's not my main focus. My main focus is really connecting you to the medicine of you, being in these spaces to create fantastic, you know, experiences, as well as with cacao, dialoguing from our truth, witnessing who we are, and then taking that activation, the truth of who you are, your full spectrum human, and allowing that to have its necessary intended impact on the rest of humanity. I need you to be the fullness of who you are. I need you to be the fullness of who you are. And that means we need to get to understand what we are, how we relate to one another, and then bring in the harmony for us to have the most, you know, fantastic experience, love, of truth, of all the life lessons in the expansion and the contraction of the process of our consciousness here. That's it in a nutshell. Or in another nutshell, one-on-one coaching, group gatherings, retreats, experiences, just really me being in the fullness of me and honoring you in the process. And of course, the Obsidian Soul Lounge. Look forward to seeing you there this Wednesday coming up, 6 p.m. Tulum time, 4 p.m. West Coast time, PST. Drop in with us. Be there on time at 6. Sign up. You've got up until the day of, maybe 12 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock. I'll shut down, you know, the the space to invite, and look for the link in the bio. Sign up sooner than later, and we'll have a good time. You'd be surprised at how fresh it is. Fresh like fresh waters. Yeah.
Fresh like the healing waters, baby.
Fresh like the healing waters. Yeah, man. So thank you all for tuning in. I send our best. Again, we send intentions for Maui, for what's going on in Lahaina, for the people on the islands, as Hawaii is a very special place for me. It's a place of many rebirths in my process. And, the connection of the waters as well with Moana, as they call the ocean, Yamaya. And wow. Yeah, we can send out that intention and hold them in our hearts, and also hold all the people of the world that are navigating things that aren't being publicized, that aren't being shared by the media, but nonetheless who are experiencing tough times. We can just think of them broadly and send a good vibe out to them, as we're very fortunate to be able to jump on, to have this technology, to speak to the wisdom, and then to be a part of the catalyst of getting this information out there and shifting into a new paradigm in terms of how we relate with one another in truth. Thank you. Mahalo. Merci beaucoup. Muchísimas gracias. From mi corazón to yours.
Mahalo. Thank you, everyone.
Shoots. All right. Anthony, I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
I love you as well, man. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, brother. Cheers.
All right. Here we go.